Hey there, you are here for the HoneyBook Basics Streamlining with Automations session. This is going to be 30 minutes long and a high-level overview of the 5 steps you need to complete in your HoneyBook account in order to be successfully set up to run automations through the system. So our goal is that you will leave with that high-level understanding. You'll know the 5 steps you need to complete, and you can go and do that today, okay? So our agenda is talking through, first off, what are automations, right? So what does it entail? When can you use them? And going through some kind of common examples of when we see our members using automations. We'll also go through some kind of common misconceptions that come up anytime I'm talking with our members about automations. There's confusion around the language. What does it mean? What are some common misconceptions there? And then we'll dive into those 5 steps to successfully set up an automation in HoneyBook. Okay, so let's dive right in. First things first, what are automations? What are we talking about here? So these are personalized, customized files, emails, or internal task reminders that are automatically triggered based on timing and or client actions. So what we're essentially talking about here is letting go of having to be uniquely involved at every single touch point in your process, especially when it comes to those repeat tasks, email sends, file sends, right? Once you're in touch enough or have visibility enough into your unique process, you can really start to fine tune and see the areas where you can afford to let go of the wheel a little bit and outsource some of that work to your automations tool, okay? So it can be a little tricky because it's always hard to let go of your process a little bit, but that's essentially what we're talking about here. What we are not talking about, this is another kind of teaser to a misconception that we talked through. What we are not talking about is robotic, generic communication with your clients. Well thought out automations will actually offer your clients proactive, personalized communication that's going to set you heads and shoulders above the competition while still allowing you time back, right? So best of both worlds here. That's essentially what we're aiming for. So when should you use them? Some common examples, a few examples to talk through. First things first, replying to new inquiries. These folks have less skin in the game. They're less engaged with you. They might just be price shopping, right? So this is a great time to outsource that responsibility to an automations tool rather than being uniquely involved and investing all this time up front with someone who hasn't even technically paid you yet. So an example of what this could look like is when a client submits your contact form, you automatically send off or they automatically receive more information about the specific services they're inquiring about, your availability, pricing, things like that. Okay, another example to think through here is kicking off next steps in your process, right? So anytime you're automating, you want to think about what the next steps are and where you can, identify that a client's behavior should then cause some reaction, right? So kicking off next steps in your process, an example of what this could look like is once your client has submitted payment, they will automatically receive a kickoff email or documentation to get them going on those next steps without you again having to react individually or uniquely to what they've done, but rather the system will identify that that action has been completed and it can react on your behalf. Another example is when you're offboarding or asking for feedback in those later stages of your project, you've wrapped things up and you want your clients to automatically receive a thank you email, a feedback survey, or personalized review links asking for them to review you, asking for referrals, asking for renewal. Those kinds of things are great to automate because the HoneyBook system can identify that project has been completed and it's time to really wrap things up with a conclusive piece of communication there, okay? anywhere else, of course, that you notice repeat actions or tasks, that is a really good indicator that it is something that you can consider automating for your business. Okay, some common misconceptions that are always coming up when I'm talking to our members around automations are going to be smart files versus automations. So smart files are for combining steps into one file for a single interaction with your client. Okay, so this is one file, right? Think about a PDF, even our simplest version of what we know a file to be. This is combined steps or actions into a single interaction with your clients. Automations are separate steps into multiple interactions across time with your clients. So sending an email day 1, sending a follow-up email day 5, offboarding your clients at the end of the project, right? Those are separate interactions, whereas a smart file is maybe one single document where your client can schedule, sign a contract and pay, but that's going to be one file that they open on one day through one email, right? Okay, so that's the difference between smart files and automations in HoneyBook. Another big question we get is around pipeline versus automation. So pipeline is for high level, right? Big picture tracking of the steps in your client flow across all of your projects, across everyone that you're working with. Automations are personalized actions of very specific steps in your client flow within individual projects. So you can say pipeline is like a bird's eye view of everyone you're working with and where they fall in the stages in your process. Automations are going to be unique steps, again, right? Think through the example, email day 1, follow-up day 3, and then a wrap-up email at the end of the project. That can be applied to one person's individual workflow or client flow with you. It does not have to be applied to every client. It can be specific to the service that one client is receiving, okay? So pipeline is for tracking. Automations is for actions. It's doing something. The pipeline is just giving you visibility. That's another way to think about it. Okay, let's move right along here to our 5 steps for success. I promise, I know I've been going through slides. I promise we are going to get into the product in just a little bit. We're going to kick that off right now. The very first thing that you want to set up when it comes to your automations, we're going to go through some pre-work today, right? Because there's 5 things that need to be done, and we're actually not even going to get to the automations tool until step number 4 here, okay? So there's some pre-work that needs to be done, and the first of those is setting up your project types. So what does that look like inside the HoneyBook tool? You're just going to pop into your company settings, come down here to preferences, and find your project types list here to edit this. What this is doing, or why we're starting here essentially, is because this is stop number 1 in terms of defining your work, your services, the clients you work with according to the HoneyBook system. So your project types are the types of jobs or the types of clients that you take on and who you're working with, whether that be defined by the services that you offer, whether it be defined by the types of clients that you work with, whether it be defined by the neighborhood that you service. There are a lot of different options here to go through, and it truly depends on your unique process. So once you've defined what these project types need to look like for your business, you can customize them, you can delete what you don't need, you can edit, you can add additional ones. I think we can have up to 17 in here, so you can get super granular into this. But what we're talking about is when your client inquires, you want some indication of who they are, what they're interested in, what type of job they're going to be for you, so that by the time you get to the automations tool, you can really segment out the communication that you're offering to them and make sure that it is super personalized, again, without having to be unique every single time, right? So if you know that all of your online course clients need very specific types of information, very specific onboarding, maybe that's someone that you typically don't offer a consult call to, you can adjust those steps in your automation to reflect that, so that those specific folks who are inquiring about that service are going through the right client flow right from the moment they submit the contact form. Okay, so set these up first. Go ahead and adjust them how you need and then hit save down here at the bottom. And then we'll go ahead and see where those impact the system later on. So moving right along, we're going to go into connecting them to the contact form, right? So this is step number 2 when it comes to setting up your automations in HoneyBook. This is, again, part of that pre-work that we're talking about. So when you pop into the HoneyBook system, you're going to come over to the contact form here. You'll scroll down. And I actually already have my project type question included in my contact form. If you do not, or just a quick way to audit your contact form to see if you have it already, you just look for a plus button. Go down here to suggested and look for project type. It says this question is already added. Great. So that means I just need to hover over these linked circles to find the correct smart field I'm looking for. This is my project type field, and I can adjust this text to say whatever I need. Okay, so you just highlight it and type in whatever you want. For my specific use case, I've just written, what services are you interested in learning more about? And this is where the list of options is going to be saved for me. Okay, that's one option for connecting the project types to your contact form. The second option is, rather than posing that question to your clients, if you are using multiple contact forms depending on project type, so if for a different project type, for example, you have a different contact form set up, i.e. maybe those online course clients have a completely different contact form, what you can do is, so we can see here, I've got some different contact forms set up. What we can do is hop into the settings section and we can just assign project type. So let's say this contact form here is specific to my online course clients. I'm just gonna go ahead and assign online course to this contact form and say anyone who's filling out this contact form, I already know they're an online course client, so I don't want to ask that question of them. I just want to assign it here. So there's the two options. You can include the question, right? So you can come over here and add the question in, or you can assign it in the settings of your contact form. So that's step number 2. First step is setting up the project type. Step 2 is assigning a project type or adding the project type question to your contact form so you can get that information at very first inquiry from your clients, which will then later help trigger those automations that we're sending. Okay, our next step here is all around building those templates. When it comes to automations, we've already talked about how this is a way to trigger emails and documentation. So we need to make sure that those emails and files are already set up before we go into the automations tool. So this is the part where you really need to kind of sit down and assess your process, assess your client flows, and decide where you want to start automating. Do you want to automate that inquiry process? If you do, what are those first couple things you do? Do you send a link to scheduling to get on the phone with them? Do you send an email thanking them for reaching out? Do you send them pricing and availability right away? What does that kind of first interaction point look like? And making sure the templates are set up for those situations. Do you want to kick off the next step in your process? What might those next steps look like, right? What might the offboarding look like if you want to automate that piece of it? So just again, thinking through some of those examples we were talking through at the beginning of today's session, and then actualizing those into your templates and making sure everything you need is set up there ahead of time so that by the time you get to the automations tool, you can just plug and play. So all the pre-work that we're doing is going to make it so easy by the time you guys get to the automations tool. I know it's very long-winded or seems long-winded to set this up ahead of time, but trust me, this is going to be a game changer for you guys in terms of saving time. You're not going to have to guess and shuffle back and forth. These steps are in order to make it as easy as possible on you. Okay, so when we're talking about setting up those templates, you're just going to pop over here into your My Template section, and the real kind of key here that you need to remember is anytime you're sending a file through an automation in HoneyBook, you're going to need a partnered email with it, right? Because if there's one thing we know about HoneyBook or any file sharing system really, when we're sharing a file with someone, it's coming essentially attached to an email. So what does the body of that email say that that file will be contained within? So every document you create, every file you create in HoneyBook needs to have an accompanying email. So build out the templates that you need for the specific use cases that you have, and then make sure that there's an email template that can go along with it, okay? Once you have all of that set up, you can actually go into building your automation. So once you've got your project type set up, once you've got your contact form set up to collect that information from your clients, once you have those templates and that messaging built out, which you guys, maybe you have these 3 things already set up today as you're watching this, and the main component that you need to know is how to build the automation. That's what we're going to go into right now, okay? So in terms of building your automation, there are actually 4 steps that you need to consider within building your automation tool. So the first step is you've got to choose your action, right? So we've talked about some of the options here, but you've got the ability to choose an email, a file, or setting up a task, okay? So what does that look like? We can pop over here to our automations tool and check it out. I'm just going to click into an existing automation so we can see what that looks like. But anytime you're adding a new step to an automation, whether it's the first step or the last step or anything in between, you're going to see these options. So you've got, again, the email option, creating a task, or sending some kind of file through the system, okay? The second piece here is going to be choosing your templates, which is why we just set those up. So this is going to be, again, either a file via email. So again, you need those 2 templates set up, right? Or it's just going to be an email. So depending on the route that you're going, you need to choose your templates from here. The third piece is going to be choosing your timing, okay? So let's go through these steps. Let's say I want to send a file, and I'm going to go ahead and choose my file from here. I want to send off this proposal. I'm going to use this one, and I need to choose the email that's going to be accompanied with it. And now I can go into choosing my timing. So do I want this to happen minutes, hours, days, weeks, after, or before, okay? And how many minutes, hours, days, weeks? This is where you decide on the timing. And then before or after will actually impact the list of options here that you have. So if you say before, you're going to have basically some project date options to choose from. But if you choose after, you're going to have a much longer list. So this is automation is activated, the project end date, the project date, a previous step is complete, meaning a previous step in the automation. So whatever you've already built here. A contract is signed, a questionnaire is submitted, invoice is paid in full, first payment is made. So that's those steps we were playing around with, talking about kicking off the next step in your process. Once first payment is made, maybe you want to kick off the process, but after the final payment is submitted, you want to send a wrap-up email, right? So there's some different triggers or things that need to happen at those different cadences. So just knowing your own process and being aware of those triggers is really helpful. Project moved to the completed stage, a brochure is submitted, smart file completed, or all required signatures have been submitted. So that is our final step. There is going to be choosing your trigger. That's everything we just went through. So first things first, you need to choose your action, choose your templates, whether that be a file or an email, or a file and an email, choosing your timing, and then choosing the trigger of the action that needs to be completed. Once you've got that set up, you can build out as many steps as you need. So we can take a peek here. In this example, I have a smart file going out with a proposal immediately after the automation is activated. 2 days later, I've got a file reminder that sends out. I've got an email here that sends another 5 days after this previous step is complete. I've got another 7-day task reminder after that, just reminding myself to archive the lead if I haven't heard back from them. Okay, so that's just an example of one that you could work through. But again, it's totally up to you and your process. The final piece here for success when it comes to setting up your automations in HoneyBook is going to be connecting that automation to a project. So we've gone through setting up our project types, attaching those project types to a contact form, building out your templates, so your emails and your files, and actually building out that automation. Once you've built the automation, now it's time to get it actually applied to a project. So there are two options when it comes to applying an automation to a project. So the first of which is automatically connecting it to the contact form, which we've already talked through a little bit, and I'll show you how to do that now. So you can do that from a specific project type like we talked through, or you can just say, generally, everyone who submits a contact form, I want them to receive this specific automation. So let's go through what that might look like. So if we back out of our example here, we can see we've got this column here that says automate via contact form, and each automation that we've set up has a list of options to choose from. So maybe I've obviously assigned this automation to my coaching inquiries, so I would want to choose something that closely aligns to that from my project types list. So again, hopefully those project types and your automations and the services that you offer, aka the templates that you have built out, they're all kind of lined up to work together, right? So when a specific client is inquiring about a specific service, you know you have the right templates for them and you can begin to automate that process. That's really what we're talking about here. So you can automate via the specific project type, or you can say, hey, everyone who inquires with me, regardless of what project they're interested in, what service they're interested in, what type of client they are, I want them to go through this 4-step process with me. So down here at the bottom, you have the option to default for all contact form submissions to go through this 4-step process. Okay, so we can see here I've got an automation set up for my branding clients. I've got one for my online course clients, and then I've got a couple that are not assigned. So what do I do with those? What are my options there? That'll bring us to our second option, which is going to be manual application of an automation to a project. So an example of a time when you might want to use this is in situations where you need the automation applied later in the process, not right after inquiry, like offboarding, or if an automation has already been completed in the past. So for example, if you know that all of your brand new inquiries, you want them to go through the same process at the very beginning that just gets them some basic information. Maybe you have them go through a more in-depth questionnaire. Maybe you have them select the services they're interested in moving forward with, even submitting payment. And then from that point forward, that's when it starts to get really customized, and you need to be in a little bit more control of the next automation that gets applied to their project, right? So that would really be kind of the main example of when you would manually apply to a project, because again, the whole point with automations is we want to automate as much as possible, meaning from the very first time of inquiry, we want to make sure that our clients are starting to receive information from us. So automating using the contact form is always going to be my recommendation for those first kind of kickoff messages. But at a later time, if you need to apply a different automation, that's when the manual application of an automation would come into play. So in a project, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this. So we can pop in and scroll down, and on the right-hand side, we'll see this automations button. We can click this and it's going to pull up our list of automation templates that we just built out. So let's say I want to apply that coaching inquiry automation that we were just working in. So you can either customize and apply it, or you can just do a quick apply, which is going to trigger that first step so long as it's after automation is applied, and kick it off right away. So for the sake of today's exercise, I'm just going to go ahead and do the quick apply. It's letting me know, hey, this is going to be applied as is with no customization. Is that okay with you? Yes, let's go ahead and apply it. And we can see all of our upcoming steps down here. If we want to take a closer look, we can click our little eyeball icon to kind of zoom in on this. We can see that first email with the file was already sent. We've got another one coming up 2 days later. And this one is actually set to approve before sending. So HoneyBook is allowing me to be in the driver's seat and still determine if I want to move forward with this next step. For example, if someone has already replied to and filled out the file, replied to the email, I probably don't want to hit them with a follow-up email 2 days later because they actually have gone forward with doing what I want them to. So that's where the approve before sending setting can really come in handy, and I can show you guys where to do that in the automations tool in just a second here. But anytime that you need flexibility for things to change, the approve before sending option is a really great one to have in place as kind of a fail-safe to make sure that you're always in control there. So where you do that in the automations tool is you just, again, pop up to the automations tab. We're going to pop into our example, and it's going to be right here, just this toggle that we have turned on for this second email. Okay, we're getting short on time, so I want to continue along here. We already went through the quick apply option and the customize before applying option. So let's take one last look at our 5 steps for success when we're setting up automations in HoneyBook. First, you're going to want to set up those project types. Then after that, you can connect those project types to your contact form. From there, you'll build out your templates, so your emails and files. Go ahead and build out the actual automation, step 4, and then the final piece is actually applying that automation to a project, whether you decide to do that at the time of inquiry using the contact form and those project types, or if you'd like to do it manually later on. Those are your 5 steps for success. And that wraps it up today. So I hope this was helpful. Be sure to check out our other HoneyBook Basics sessions if you want to learn more. If you're looking for more of an introduction, we do have our orientation session that you can check out as well. Thanks for being here today, and we'll talk to you soon.